Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Popcorn from 1991. So, right out of the gate, I'm just going to state that I had fun with this film. Like, to me, it reminded me of so many different films. Like, There's Someone Inside Your House, and it reminded me of John Goodman's Matinee. It also reminded me of The Dark Man, or Darkman, the Liam Neeson movie. But they ended up making sequels after that with different people at some point. And it also just reminded me of like Phantom of the Opera. And so, going to this movie, what is it about? We have a character named Maggie who is having these unusual dreams. She's taking this tape recorder to talk it out, to record all of her dream, so that way she can take this dream and make a movie out of it. And come to find out, Maggie is to possibly take this skill to make an actual film, when Maggie, of course, is to go to film school. So, come to find out, Maggie is to find out on the day she comes to class that Mr. Davis is renting out this movie theater for them to go on and put out a couple of films that, of course, are horror related, to give this unique theater experience that people can't get at home, and to hope that they can go on and win all these people over and be at some point able to make a good profit to make a movie from one of these students. So we go on and go to this Dreamland movie theater where they're going to rent this place out, and we end up having a character called Toby who finds this unusual film called The Possessor. They end up having all these students watch this film, and they were all thinking that this movie was very unusual. But then Toby was to mention that it's like, well, this movie is to be tied to a true event where it seems that this guy was to be so upset with a number of people that he was to watch, or he was to put out this film, and no one liked it, so he went on and killed his whole entire family in front of a number of people. And so they then realized maybe it's in bad taste to go on and show this film to anybody else. So they go on, and the very next night are to have this movie marathon. So everybody's kind of working on this movie theater. And so while they're going on and showing all of these films, we have people die during them who are all working in this movie theater, who, of course, are all to mostly be these film students. And so, come to find out, we realize that history is going to repeat itself from that true story of the guy who is to go on and put this movie together and then kill his family afterwards. It seems that there is to be a man there who is killing all these people, who is wanting to go on and recreate that family death from, of course, X number of years ago. And we'll come to find out his backstory and who he really is. So, I thought that this was a really interesting film. Like, at least it was like a solid okay film. And just because so much about this was just so, like, right up my alley. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to just go into spoiler territory. I'm possibly not going to remember everything, but hopefully I'm going to get most of this down. So, with that said, I think it's about that time yet again to, of course, go into that double 5 time territory because it's spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about the time again to spoil this movie. Where can you go on and see this movie before I go into absolute spoilers? Currently, right now, I think this movie is available on AMC Plus, and I would also recommend a number of apps where you could be able to see this movie for free. So that, of course, would be at first a app called Doxy, Doxcy. You can go into the Google Play Store and hopefully find this app and be able to watch Popcorn for absolutely free. You can also go on to a app through the Google Play Store called Play UHD, and hopefully you'll search this, find this on the Google Play Store, find out that it has a logo that says Fox HD Movies, be able to download said app and be able to watch Popcorn. So, that said, let's just go into spoilers. So, in the beginning of the movie, like I had kind of stated in the teeing up thing, there's only so much you can try to vastly differ from the teeing up to the spoilers. So, we have Maggie who is going on and going through this dream and hearing this name of Sarah consistently. And so Maggie goes on and is to take, when she's to wake up, every bit of this dream and is to verbally state all of it into this tape recorder and is to call her main character Sarah. So we have Maggie going on and stating certain things about her movie, and Suzanne overhears it, and she's like, well, it's kind of unusual that you're calling your main character Sarah. And Maggie's just like, well, I don't know, like all of this is just kind of coming to me, and really Maggie's to hope that there might be a number of other like movie writers who are all to have gone on and like use their dreams as being able to put a movie together. So Maggie is to go on to her college film school class, and we have Suzanne who ends up getting this phone call from a person who is obviously a wrong number. Then this guy ends up stating to Suzanne, it's like, well, I hope you deserve to go into the 9th level of hell. And Suzanne's like, oh my god. And so she ends up hanging up with this guy. So Maggie goes on to this class, and we, of course, have Mr. Davis, who is to tell all of the students, like, hey, we have this pitch here. We're going to rent out this movie theater to be able to showcase these 3 films. And so for these 3 movies, while they're going to play Mosquito, they're going to have an actual mosquito kind of flying around to scare people. And during the Attack of the Amazing Electrified Man, they're going to shock people underneath their seats. And then for the stench, they're going to go on and put in place some like odors that people are going to freak out about. So they go on into this movie theater called Dreamland. Oh, one thing that I also have to state. When Maggie was making her way to this film class, she bumps into Mark. Mark, who is to immediately want to tear away Maggie, tear off all of her clothes, and just do her. And Maggie is just like, well, I'm sorry, but I go to film school, and also Maggie is stating that she's just busy. And Mark is like, well, you're always busy. By the time that you're not busy, like, I'm probably no longer going to not be busy. Because Mark is to turn around and dump Maggie for a girl named Joy. Come to find out he'll regret that decision, but it is what it is. So Maggie is to go to this movie theater named Dreamland, and so they end up going on and finding these cases that have all these movie props, and they also end up meeting with a Dr. Meninson? Meninson? Close enough. This character, this doctor, is to go on and state that he hopes that he, as well as all these people in this theater here, could go on and take all these turkeys and turn them into a Thanksgiving Day feast, as he is to really just try to metaphorically go on and motivate these people to try to make the best possible experience that they can. So, in that this equipment that this guy has used for a very long time, and it normally always works. So we go on to have Toby, who is to find this unusual film called Possessor, and so the class ends up looking into it to realize, like, okay, this film is really unusual. It's a very mass number of like close-up shots. It's very odd. So come to find out, Dr. Davis, or Mr. Davis, is to be familiar with this kind of film. And so I guess it used to be some kind of joke movie that people would pull on people. But so Toby would also come out with the fact that there is to be some history with this movie called The Possessor. It seems that the story is that there was this guy named Lanyard Gates who had gone on to put out this movie that no one liked, and then afterwards Lanyard was, or Gates, was to have killed his whole family after this movie was over, or tried to. And so, after it seems that there is some unusual true story to this Possessor movie, they decide to not go on and showcase this to anybody at this movie theater. And so they go on and have Maggie go back home. And so Maggie, who has gone on to see this movie, The Possessor, and she faints during it and then has the students kind of wake her up. Maggie is to tell Suzanne about the movies that she's to see, and she's like, well, it's kind of weird that Maggie knew about this dream, or knew about this movie that connected to her dreams and was the same exact movie. And so Maggie's thinking, am I some kind of psychic? And so Suzanne is like, well, no, maybe there's something more than that. And so Maggie is to go on again after Maggie goes to bed. Susan is to get this phone call forcing her to have a showdown between Suzanne and Gates at this Dreamland movie theater. So Suzanne is forced to go and seek out Gates to try and protect her daughter Maggie, and hope that Suzanne can shoot whoever this assailant is, so all of this will resolve and be over with. So Suzanne goes into the movie theater to see The Possessor playing. Because, of course, when Suzanne is to see the sign of this movie marathon, all of a sudden we start to see every one of these letters all fall from off of this sign, and it's starting to hit Suzanne, and then it ends up replacing the words with Possessor. And so Maggie then goes on into the movie theater to see the movie, and Suzanne at one point is getting scared by all of these kind of shadowy figures kind of running around. So Suzanne at one point is trying to figure out where this person can be, and so she ends up getting backed up against this wall, and come to find out there is hands that rip through this wall, grab Susan, and we assume that Susan is dead, but come to find out, uh, we'll see her again by the end of this film. So Maggie ends up getting up the next day to find a note from her mother that states, like, tonight's the night, love ya, mom. And Maggie's like, okay, this is weird. So Maggie then goes on to her movie theater, so that way she can go on and sell tickets for this movie. And then she kind of continues to trade off with Tina. So Maggie, of course, is to find out while she's selling tickets, and after they've gone on and cleaned up this movie theater and everything like that to get this whole thing together, we have Maggie finding out that one of the people going and seeing one of these movies is Mark with her new girlfriend, or with his new girlfriend, Joy. And so we have Mark who's walking off with this other girl watching this film. So while Maggie is consistently giving tickets to all these people, at one point she is to see this unusual character that sounds familiar. So Maggie is to go on and have Tina trade places with her, so that way Maggie can go on and state to, of course, Toby that she thinks Gates is in this movie theater. And Toby, of course, doesn't go on and believe her, and that this guy should actually be dead, and there's no way that he should still be alive, yada, yada, yada. So Toby then goes on and is to investigate, while Maggie is to stay within this projector room. So we have Mark that states to Joy that he's going and leaving the movie Mosquito so he can go on and get some popcorn. So while Joy is watching this film, we all of a sudden have this big guy who goes and sits closer to try to get a better seat, and he goes on to sit next to Joy while watching Mosquito. So Mark goes on and is to talk to the girls and is to find out that Maggie is to be in this projector room. And so he kind of tries to get up behind her so he can try to get with Maggie. And Maggie's going on like, no, like, I'm not really interested. Tonight's not the night. Yada, yada, yada. So we go on to, of course, have Maggie that tries to explain to Mark about what has all happened tonight. And so we end up having at one point where Toby is trying to investigate all about what Maggie had mentioned, and Toby ends up getting locked out of the theater. So Toby has to go on and sneak around to make his way back into the projection room, because of course, when Toby has to make certain adjustments, he has to do them like in an accurate amount of time. So for Mosquito, we go on, we have Mr. Davis, who is to go on and trying to be flying this mosquito throughout this film. So we have these actors that are in this movie who are being attacked by this mosquito. At one point, there is this mosquito that jumps onto this car and is trying to suck the life out of one of the actors, who I believe is to be Skeeter, who is to be this kind of cliche farmer guy. And so, with this, of course, being with Dr. Vladimir, or yeah, Vladimir? That doesn't sound right in my brain. So, we have Skeeter who ends up getting killed, and Skeeter was to have taken this doctor to look at these sheep that have these unusual hole marks in them, and it feels like they've been drained. Well, come to find out, Skeeter will have that same problem as he is going to get drained, as if somebody had put uh, a straw within his brain and sucked him up. So Dr. Latimer is to talk to Lieutenant Bradley, who it seems both these characters at some point are going to fall in love in this film. And so when this massive bug tries to break through, we have all three of these characters, another character called Corky, who is to go on and try to pray to have this bug go away. And so we go on and have then Mr. Davis, who is to release out this bug, this mosquito, to then fly around during this film. Well, of course, we have this big action sequence where this massive plane ends up taking out this bug. So we have Mr. Davis flying this around, and so come to find out, we have supposedly Gates, who is also to have his little controller that he can control where this bug is going to end up. And so immediately this bug ends up going on to have one of its uh, kind of bug pieces stab right into Mr. Davis, and he kills him off. So Gates ends up going on to drag, of course, Mr. Davis's body, and ends up becoming him, trying to go on and quickly try to make this face of uh, Mr. Davis, so we can of course have Gates become Mr. Davis. So we have Mr. Davis that is in the back of this movie theater, and we go on to have the next movie roll, which of course is to be uh, the Attack of the Amazing Electrified Man. So we go on to, of course, have Mark, after talking to Maggie, and Maggie is going on about, like, well, wait a minute, like, it seems that something is suspicious here. Like, if anybody's to kind of not be themselves, Maggie's to make the conclusion that it's already Mr. Davis, because ideally, if Mr. Davis has not really been seen by anybody, that means that Gates has to be Mr. Davis. And she's coming to these conclusions and figuring things out. So, because also Maggie and both Mark had, of course, also been locked out of this movie theater also. Because Toby, of course, when he makes it back, he then goes on to have both Maggie and both Mark go out to find where Mr. Davis is, and come to find out, Tina is to guide these two characters to then get locked out of this movie theater. But so, speaking of Tina, while talking to both Maggie and Mark, is dead. And so what happens is that Tina is to talk to a guy named Bud, and Bud doesn't know exactly how to trigger this shock device to shock all of these chairs. And so Bud is to realize that he's going to have to go on and shock all these people's chairs individually. So we go on to have Tina, that is, to try to find Mr. Davis so he can ask, or she can ask him that question. So when Tina is to find Mr. Davis, Tina is to go on and want to get a quickie with her teacher, because Tina, of course, is sleeping with this guy to get a good grade, and Tina is mentioning that no one else is to figure out how she does so well in this class, but no one is to realize that she's sleeping with the teacher. So we have Tina that goes on to put this rope upon herself and Mr. Davis, and come to find out, Tina is to notice that Mr. Davis's skin is a little bit dry. So we have Tina that kisses Mr. Davis to then realize that everything that she is kissing all of a sudden is to become attached to her own skin, because she is to find out that this really isn't Mr. Davis. So we have this face that comes peeling off, and we have Tina who ends up getting freaked out by what she is to see here. So we have Tina who then goes on to get killed, and so then we're ending up right back to where we are, where Maggie and Mark are finding Tina, and Tina is telling them to go in a certain direction, which is the right thing, because this isn't actually Tina, it's now dead Tina, who has been puppeteered to tell these people where to go. So a lot of them were, so Mark was going on and stating to like Maggie how like Tina, like it felt like she didn't either look right or sound right. But so, anyways, we go on and have Maggie, and we have Mark making it back into the theater. So now we have the Electrified Man, the attack of the amazing Electrified Man. So within this movie, we have to go on and kill off another person, and that person ends up being Bud. Bud, who of course is character in this wheelchair, we come to find out we're going to have Gates, who is to strap Bud in to this electrified equipment, and is to go on to put an electric chair style apparatus upon this guy's head, so that way when a certain trigger goes on for this movie and people are to get shocked, we're going to go on and have Bud, who gets the ultimate shock that kills him. So come to find out, what is the electrified, or the attack of the amazing Electrified Man about? Well, we have this guy who is going on death row, and he of course is going into the electric chair to get executed. So come to find out, while this prisoner is talking to this doctor, it seems that they're talking about corpuscles, and the fact that this doctor is to state like, well, hey, maybe if I give you this specific corpuscle, maybe you're going to go on and sit in this electric chair and not die from it. So this prisoner is like, okay, this sounds like a great idea. So while this guy is walking on to go and get put into this chair, we have a number of guys that are making all these like these jokes that in this movie aren't really jokes, but like we have a number of guys who are all stating like, well, hey, keep that chair warm for me. And the prisoner's like, okay, I will. And like, hey, tell my mother I love her in heaven. And the prisoner's like, well, like, it would be great if I can go on and do that, but I don't think I'm going to heaven. And so, like, we have all these things that I feel are jokes here, that they're leading up to this guy going into the electric chair. So he goes on into the electric chair, and come to find out the electric chair doesn't go on and kill him, but once he goes on and touches people, he electrifies and kills them. So this leads to have this guy at some point go on and want to kill all the people that were either police or to be his love. And so that has them at one point trying to put together this trick on the electrified man to hope that he's going to stumble upon this thing to kill him off. But so, come to find out, the love of the electrified man is to decide that she's going to risk her own life to take out the electrified man, and so she grabs him and they both go together. And so that is about the time when Bud also goes out and gets electrified and killed, as Bud is consistently trying with his hand to grab this one cord to turn this machine off. But after it seems Bud ends up getting electrocuted, all of the power ends up going out. So, here's the goofiest thing about this film that makes no sense. So, we go on to have both Leon and Joni, who make the decision that they're going to put this band out in front of everybody to kind of keep everybody busy while they're going to go on and figure out how to get the power back on. So all of a sudden this like reggae band kind of plays. It seems like they end up using some reggae music throughout this film, and more than likely it might have gone on and just been like, hey, like this is the cheapest money we could find, blah, 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 to just, or this is the cheapest music we can find. So anyways, we have this band going on stage, and every single instrument that they are playing doesn't make sense for them to not need power to put all of these things back on. Like, we have these guys that are all kind of singing into these microphones. I'm like, where's the power for that? People have these like keytars, which is a piano guitar, and they have electric guitars, and I'm like, so you have this band that just must conveniently have either them like lip syncing, or you are to go on and have a generator off to the side that this band has just brought in for their own ability to play their own instruments, right? Because that doesn't make sense. So we go on to, of course, have the power eventually come back on so they can play the movie The Stench. So we go on, and of course, during the Stench movie, we of course have to have the killer Gates go after a number of people, but before he goes on and does that, we have Maggie that is with Mark a number of times, as when Maggie is to go on and make her way out of this this ticket booth, she then opens this door and dumps Mark on his butt, because Mark, of course, is to be this character who is to be this klutz. We even have one moment where Mark, Maggie, and Cheryl are to be walking around in this movie theater, and this is to go on and happen after we have Joy and we have her supposed new boyfriend, this bigger guy, go on and have this argument between them, which forces Cheryl to go on and beat the crap out of this bigger guy, to then push both Joy and this kind of bigger man outside of this theater. So we have Cheryl, Maggie, and Mark that are all kind of walking through this movie theater, and at one point Mark is to fall, and Cheryl ends up going and checking on him, and she ends up crushing his hand by accident. So we have Maggie that ends up being by her lonesome, and come to find out, we have Gates who is to go on and grab her, and so Gates ends up setting her up into the machine that is to go on and copy her face so that way he can go on reuse her face to be her whenever he likes. So come to find out, we find out all together that the person who is to be the killer in this movie isn't Gates at all. Come to find out from the story, we are to realize that Gates had died in that fire, and we are to instead have the guy who is to play Toby here is to be the killer simply because he was tied to that movie theater of when that that event had happened. So Toby is blaming Sarah Gates, who is actually Maggie, because Sarah at some point is to confess to Toby that she is to realize that she is Sarah Gates, and that whole story of what had happened to Gates is tied to her because Gates is her father. And I guess Maggie had gone on to get a name change. We also had Suzanne talk to Maggie when Maggie was talking about her possibly being a psychic. Suzanne was stating that maybe they could run off together because they've done it in the past. And Maggie's like, no, 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 no. Like, I think I'm fine with just kind of sticking around here. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. So yeah. So come to find out, Toby had been in this movie theater while Sarah's father had gone on to try and kill people. And so Toby is seeking revenge. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting twist. And so this guy, of course, is to consistently have burns over his face. So he is to consistently have this face replacement and complain about how long it takes to go on and become Toby consistently. So we go on to have this really cool effect where Toby is to switch from a number of different people. For him to go on and be temporarily Mr. Davis, temporarily being Tina, to temporarily being like a number of people. And I thought that was really cool. So we then have Toby, who showcases to Maggie that Suzanne is to still be alive and she's casted in this full body cast to show her like holding on to this gun. So we're getting ready to now have Toby showcase the film in the middle of the snitch, or the sniff, or the snitch, the stench, my bad. I was trying to figure out what the last movie was. And so we go on to have Toby, who in the middle of the stench movie ends up showcasing possession. And all of a sudden, while this movie's going on, we just start to have Toby, who is going through the movie theater and telling everybody how bad the movie Possession is. And they're like, yeah, it is bad. This movie sucks. And so Toby goes on to go behind the movie screen to then set up both Maggie and Suzanne's bodies so that way he can go on and recreate what is going on in the possession in real life for this movie, and to try and go on and recreate this movie in a much more theater-like presentation. So they end up rolling up the movie screen to then recreate this movie. And so we have Toby that is going on and asking the audience whether or not he should go on and kill Maggie. And everybody seems to be on board to kill this woman off, not realizing that this is all fake, that it's actually real going on here. So we have Toby who's like, well, okay, like, let's do this right at midnight. Let's do this countdown. So all of a sudden we have Mark flying in on this belt through this, like, this line. So Mark ends up falling, and when he ends up falling, it seems that there is to be this this malfunction, that all of a sudden this mosquito ends up coming flying in, and it attacks Toby and stabs into him and kills him off here. And so Mark ends up going on to free Maggie, and then afterwards Mark ends up stating to Maggie, it's like, well, I guess I wasn't like your knight in shining armor, but I guess I did technically save the day. And so that ends up going on to kind of having everybody be saved here. And of course, Toby's now killed. So I was kind of wondering if we would go on and still find out that, like, Gates was still alive. And also, we had the one moment when Mark was to also find out from Joni that Joni really liked Toby and knows where he lives. Mark had went on to Toby's place to find out that this guy has been, like, planning what is to go on for a very long stretch of time, and that Mark is to find this one guy who is this landlord who is talking about that he was a actor once and maybe he can be in a movie and so on and so forth. But we have this landlord who's talking about how, like, Toby is this, like, weird dude, and that like, this guy is going to be dumped out of here with all of his stuff, and, like, he seems like some kind of Jack the Ripper kind of guy. And so Marcus then realize that, like, Toby is the killer here, and he runs off to go back to the movie theater to try and save Maggie, but it all almost comes far too late. We also had, during the stench, where Leon and Joni, and Leon, of course, looks very much like Rick and Morty, before Rick and Morty, so I thought that was kind of funny. So Leon and Joni are fixing, like, the smells for the movie, the stench, and we had Leon who ends up having to go to the bathroom, and he ends up going to, like, the porta-john, or the kind of the urinal, to whip it out and pee, and all of a sudden we have somebody who looks just like him, because it's to, of course, be Toby. And we all of a sudden have both of these guys looking at one another, and we have Toby peeing on Leon, and I'm like, man, what is it with peeing today? Like, I went on and saw like Rawhead Rex today also, and the monster ends up peeing on the guy. So I'm like, what am I getting? Like a weird, goofy peeing theme? I didn't get that in Quantum Leap today because of course I wouldn't. But so we have Toby who pees on Leon and then puts Leon in this bathroom stall to then drop this thing into this toilet where all of a sudden these gases are to be released and Leon ends up dying, I guess, from all the gas fumes. So Toby then goes on as Leon to try and kill Joni, and Joni is to state how much she is in love with Toby, and that all of a sudden gets Toby to run off and peel off all of his face and whatever, to say that he is to be dealing with too much to be thinking anywhere about Joni and how much she likes him. So, with that said, I hope that that is to go on and cover most of this film. I know there was little bits of dialogue that I probably should have went with or might have been interesting, but I also wanted to try to get this out as quickly as possible because it's very late in the day and I've also kind of gotten a number of things out already. So who knows how people are going to like this movie if they've gone on and seen this already and want to check out this review. I really appreciate anybody going on and listening to any bit of this. But yeah, I wanted to state this movie and talk about it in the best way I could because I liked this movie. It was like once I immediately was to find out what this movie was about, I was like, heck yeah, I'm definitely going to want to go on and see this movie because it seems so much similar to a number of things that I've already checked out more recently. So it was like, yeah, this movie seemed uh, to really be up my alley. So with that said, goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.